Roy Walthall of Waco announces his withdrawal from the Texas legislative race and the reasons for that withdrawal. And now, former candidate Roy Walthall.
My fellow citizens, on leap day, February 29, 2012, the Texas Federal Western District Court in San Antonio issued the third set of legislative redistricting maps and have yet again moved the Democratic and Republican primaries from March to April to now May 29th with the July 31st runoff. In the Republican-drawn legislative plan, our state representative district was gerrymandered in a ridiculous fashion to include the leftovers of two urban metropolitan counties, McLennan and Brazos, separated by 100 miles of rural counties, Limestone, Falls, and Robertson. I have since discovered that this open seat in Central Texas, a rarity in the state, was drawn specifically by the Republicans so that a very powerful statewide lobbying group could have their hand-picked lobbyists become our next state representative. The federal court's first attempt at correcting the blatant discrimination that the legislature did was to add on to that district several rural and suburban precincts in McLennan County that made District 57 more favorable for me, as I have always done well in my previous races with the voters of China Spring, Bosqueville, Lacey Lakeview, and Riesel. Also, as an added bonus, District 57 in Brazos County was home to the Texas Transportation Institute, the Texas A&M Veterinary School, and the George H.W. Bush School of Public Affairs. All three of those institutions I would have worked closely with and tried to enhance their state appropriations. Personally, I was hoping that as they were sent back to the drawing board by the United States Supreme Court, that the three district judges would stay with this fairer district. Instead, their latest plan perpetuates the original legislature's attempt to make a tailor-made district for the special interest. We, the people of Texas, are owed an apology by the Texas legislature, which had a 140-day regular session and then a 30-day special session to do their constitutional duty, and they miserably failed. They have caused by their actions so much chaos that it is extremely hard for the Texas voters, or even us who were candidates, to comprehend all the ramifications. If nothing else, the voters of Texas should defeat every incumbent legislator, none of which are in this race, who voted for this blatant scam, to teach them that they will not tolerate such nonsense ever again. It did not have to come to this. However, it did because a party who had earlier gerrymandered and discriminated wanted to maintain their 12 to 15% excess padding that was neither warranted nor sustainable. Thus, they had to grossly overstep their authority and blatantly discriminate again against Latinos and blacks because their sin is that they vote for Democratic candidates. So we are now left with three federal district judges, two of whom were appointed for life by Republican presidents, to do what the people's legislature should have but couldn't accomplish, and that was to do the right thing. But even they failed as partisanship ruled the day. Redistricting should at its essence be about communities of interest, not about trying to get partisan advantage and to re-elect incumbents. Through my life, I have had the honor to serve on three state advisory panels as the Central Texas representative. I have served with distinguished Texans from the large metroplexes, West Texas, East Texas, the Rio Grande Valley, and the Gulf Coast. In every instance, my fellow panelists viewed Central Texas as a conglomeration of McLennan and Bell counties, where over 500,000 people currently reside within a relatively small, compact area. When the 2010 census data was released, I noticed that for the first time in history, McLennan and Bell counties could have been equally and fairly divided into three representative districts. One that would represent McLennan exclusively, one that would represent Bell exclusively, and the third which would have been a rural-suburban conglomeration of the two. The great advantage of such a redistricting plan would be that all three would have shared the same media markets, the same economic concerns, and most important, all three districts would have been equally competitive for either Republicans or Democrats to win. For those who claim to value competition in our free enterprise system, these same people become deathly silent when one recommends competition in our political system. That is what should have occurred, but alas it didn't because partisan politics and self-preservation ruled the day. During this long protracted mess, realizing that the partisan fix was in, many of my supporters encouraged me to consider instead challenging Mr. Birdwell for our state Senate seat. After all, Mr. Birdwell was elected in a quirky, very low turnout special election in 2010 when our state senator from Waco, Kip Everett, who on the filing deadline in 2010 had neither a Republican nor Democratic challenger, but nevertheless caused two separately costly elections to occur. During that period, it was shown pretty conclusively that Mr. Birdwell had voted in Virginia in 2008, thus disqualifying him from office in Texas. But alas, a Republican appellate court panel threw the case out on a technicality, and the Democratic candidate dropped out, allowing Mr. Birdwell to waltz into office unopposed. Mr. Birdwell then went to Austin and did nothing to solve the large budgetary shortfall, and also, let us not forget that he voted to create this current redistricting disaster. There's an old saying in Texas that if you're not going to do anything, at least don't mess things up. Mr. Birdwell did absolutely nothing for our district, but while in Austin contributed greatly to making our state worse off. Actually, as bad as the Republicans made our state house district unwinnable for any Democrat, they made our state senate district a toss-up in their revenge to take out Fort Worth's very good Democratic Senator, Wendy Davis. Their scheme was that by giving many of her Democratic voters to Mr. Birdwell, who they trusted would run again unopposed, they would kill two birds with one stone. Unfortunately, my potential candidacy in that race, known only in the highest of political circles, upset their apple cart, and after doing their political calculations, key Republican operatives decided to tell Attorney General Greg Abbott to cave in and give Senator Davis back her seat, and by doing so, insulate their weak puppet Birdwell again with an overwhelmingly Republican gerrymandered district. If I did nothing else during this election cycle other than to keep a good state senator like Wendy Davis in Austin, then my effort was indeed worthwhile. So although sympathetic to challenging the do-nothing Birdwell, the Walthall for Texas campaign would likely, in this age of Citizens United, where the Supreme Court ruled that corporations are people, be effectively outspent 100-1 and would have been out-endorsed as every special interest cause, Republican office holder, and business lobbying group has already signed up to keep their puppet senator in office. Still others suggested to me to help the effort that is underway across Texas to create and run as a candidate for the new Texas Reform Party, which, unlike the reactionary Republicans and the dysfunctional Democrats, would actually push for an agenda that would fundamentally change the status quo in Texas politics and actually give Texas voters a choice. But alas, this redistricting fiasco has made that option unattainable, at least in 2012, but still a viable possibility for the gubernatorial race in 2014. However, there was one other calculation that weighed heavily on my soul about serving this next session in the Texas legislature, and that related, strangely enough, directly to the Republican presidential race. My theory all along was that our longest-serving governor, Rick Perry, did not have the right stuff to win the Republican nomination. Therefore, his disastrous debate performances came to me as no great surprise. However, I've worked with Governor Perry through the years, and he and my mom grew up a stone's throw from each other's tenant farms outside of Haskell, Texas. Personally, I actually like and admire him as a man and respect him as a governor. I just think as a politician, he is an opportunist. For me, the real Rick Perry came out in that Republican Florida debate when he was being booed by a rabid Republican mob audience and he passionately told them they didn't have a heart. So perhaps wishfully, I was hoping that our governor would return to Texas and be a lame duck for the next 2 years. It was my hope that as fellow fiscal conservatives, we would have truly put together a bipartisan coalition to solve many of the vexing issues that we both passionately agree on. Unfortunately, he and his political advisors have already signaled that they are again running for another unprecedented fourth re-election in 2014 and will try again for the presidency in 2016. What does that have to do with anything? Well, I personally witnessed during this past session how totally hamstrung and how gutless the legislative leaders were. They had neither the will nor the fortitude to do anything that may have affected this governor's presidential plans. And what I see coming is another 4 years of repeating this nonsense. Many politicians like taking our taxpayers' bestowed salaries and do nothing as legislators, but silly me would have actually wanted to go to Austin and earn that $600 a month by trying to solve the many problems facing my fellow Texans. In my 5 previous campaigns, I have been the underdog. Personally, I would have relished, again, that underdog status. But running in a new party, trying to get the meaningless Democratic Party nomination in a 3-time delayed fiasco in House District 12, or waging a general election Senate race, I would feel like Mitt Romney's dog being hauled in an animal crate all over Kingdom Come on the top of his car. It would have been a very unpleasant ride. mainly because in order to have a chance in that race, there are those even within my party that suggested that I would need to disavow the national ticket. To them I say forget that advice, as I would be totally unapologetic in my 100% support for President Barack Obama and his running mate, either Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton. Unlike the do-nothings here in Texas, the Obama administration has brought us out of the second worst economic disaster in American history, and he has defeated our terrorist enemies that caused the horrible tragedy of 9/11. Not only should he be reelected, but also a Democrat Congress should be elected to help him finish what he so eloquently promised us in 2008. To that end, I withdrew my candidacy for State Representative District 57 this past leap day, which no longer legally exists, and have notified Paul Sadler that I will devote my political energies in Central Texas to electing him in November as a Democrat in the great Texas tradition of men like Sam Houston, Lyndon Johnson, and Lloyd Bentsen. We desperately need someone of his talents, wisdom, and integrity to again serve our state and nation as an outstanding United States Senator in Washington, D.C. Both my wife and I supported his efforts while he served in the Texas legislature on education, and I want to work with him on bringing infrastructural jobs to Texas, especially in transportation and energy. Meanwhile, I will also continue to communicate through my website, walthall4texas.org, the many issues that will make Texas great again, such as establishing the first participatory democracy in a Republican form of government, bringing jobs to the district, including passenger rail service, fuel cell technology, cheaper energy and water to our region, balancing our budget, reforming our elections, including the way we are governed with a new reorganized Texas Constitution, and bringing fairness to the way we all pay too much in local property taxes by broadening our state tax base. In conclusion, I want to thank the hundreds of supporters that have all encouraged me in this confusing and uncertain election cycle. My wife Tamara, my daughter Telly, and son Rydell deeply appreciated every one of you for your support, your ideas, but most of all, your prayers. Also, I want to do a shout out to my excellent campaign team of former Mayor Charles Reed, David Gray, Councilwoman Lucy Krakowiak, and my father-in-law Paul Wise. Each of you were so incredibly helpful and supportive. However, as I just alluded, our work is not over. I'm hereby requesting that with me you roll up your sleeves, as we have much work still to do. For during this campaign, I have heard my fellow Texans cry out for reform and for politicians to humbly serve the people, not arrogantly dictate us their selfish desires. However, the plutocracy that rules us is very formidable and unrelenting in their steadfastness to totally rule us every day and in every way. However, the fight must go on, no matter how long or hard that battle wages. For what is at stake is the very soul and future of our beloved Texas and of our blessed United States of America. Thank you very much, and may God bless you.